Boom goes the dynamite. It's official. Bralan Womack is an Auburn Tiger.
In a world full of podcasts, he's the undisputed heavyweight champion of hot takes, an Auburn sports homer, master of the boog, and message board legend. Get your buttons buttoned and your hats flattened because the Top Button Podcast is about to kick off. And you don't want to miss your courtside seat. Now, here's your host, Charlie Five.
So we're back. It's another episode of the Top Button Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Rush, a.k.a. Charlie Five, and we are ready to get after it. I got my man Sam back on with us to talk about this huge commitment. Bralan Womack is an Auburn Tiger. I got to be careful, though, because, you can flip pretty easy now. But for now, he's an Auburn Tiger. We're going to seal the deal later on. But regardless, we're going to talk about that commitment. TJ Rushing with a big one on the board. Thumbs up to him. We'll break that down. And I think this is the first real five-star DB that Auburn's ever had committed from a composite or industry ranking standpoint. We'll look into that too in just a second. But before we do that, let's give a quick shout out to Rhoback.com. Use coupon code BARN20 to take 20% off your order. It doesn't matter what you want. You want polos, you want hoodies, pullovers. They got everything. They got Auburn licensed apparel. They got some new stuff just dropped, a polo, a hoodie, and a pullover. So get ready for game day as well and save big. Show them some love. It's Rhoback.com. Sam, my man, Bralan, it wasn't like it was a huge surprise. It was something we've been expecting for a while, but man, it feels good to get another big-time commit, five-star, composite five-star everywhere you look. Number 13 player in the country, according to 247 Sports. It's big, man.
Yeah, man. I know I told you before, when we started to get the buzz, I was like, I think this is the most impressive get of the Hugh Freeze era because there's guys like Cam Coleman, but they went through a coaching change. There's guys like Perry Thompson, but he's not rated quite as high, even though it was a flip from Bama. And, for several reasons, I think this is huge. Ohio State national champ, yes. To me, they recruit on a different level than everyone else. They're up there with like Texas and Oregon. It's like when they lock in on a guy, you kind of think, oh no, here we go. I looked at the composite going back to 2021 and 12. So they have 12 commits that were top 3 at their position in the composite ranking since 2021. And we only have 1, and that's Cam Coleman. Now we have 2 if we sign Womack, but it just shows you that they're a heavyweight of the recruiting world. And we got, it was us and Ohio State. There were some other schools in the mix, but it was that was kind of it. Those were the 2 main ones. And to go in there, head up with Ryan Day is pretty impressive, all things considered, in my opinion.
100%. Couldn't agree more. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Ryan Day went in home. He couldn't go in home last week because it was a dead period, but there was a big conversation. He was going for him up until the very, very end. So it's not like they just kind of threw the towel in. They really put one last big charge together, and Auburn still closed it. It was obviously everything you said is 1,000% true and makes a really big deal as far as making this a huge deal to land this kid. So let's talk about the announcement. There were so many cool things about the announcement. Number one, I've never seen this before. This is really cool. You know how they typically put out the hats? He had chains. He had the diamond chains, and that was sick. He had 4 chains lined up on a little mannequin, which I've never seen that before. Is there anything like that you've seen other than hats, like something crazy like that?
No, it's funny because normally they'll have 6 or 7 hats out there, and then you'll see one looks like it was bought from, Walmart, and one was from Kmart. And then you've got 2 that are 2 or 3 that look really good. And you're like, okay, those 3 schools are, one of those 3 is getting the commitment. So when I saw the chains, I was like, man, that's pretty unique. And then of course I was thinking, I just hope he used some of that Ohio State NIL to buy all 4 of the chains,
Exactly.
He'll get money from us down the road, but he's got some money from them, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. He had his sister on stage, who is, I believe, on the softball team here at Auburn. That obviously played a huge role in him coming to Auburn. I think it was one of those deals. I don't think Auburn, by any means, this was a cheap acquisition. This won't be a cheap acquisition, but it felt like if Auburn could just kind of get in the ballpark, he wanted to be here from the beginning. I want to talk to you about. I know I've had some people ask me some questions. I want to get yours, see if you have any concerns about this. He does play in it's a Mississippi. The state of Mississippi has a private school league, but it's a little bit different than when you think about like Alabama private school football. He does play for a private school in Mississippi. They do play some, let's just call it what it is, some games that are a little bit, when the competition level is just not quite there. Does that concern you at all with his ranking, the level of competition he plays?
To be honest with you, not really. When it comes to maybe like a quarterback or like a big left tackle, it might worry me a little bit more. But when it comes to a lot of these positions where it's just like you have the measurables and the athleticism to be in the SEC or the Big Ten, I think it kind of comes out in the wash. And I think worst case scenario, you get a guy that may be the game is a little bit fast for him when he gets here, but just like anyone else that's really talented, I think if he sticks around and develops, he'll be, I think at worst he'll be a special teams guy next year. And then you start to bring him along and see some of that raw athleticism kind of get tapped into. So I don't have any problem with it. Montravius Adams, there's a litany of guys that we've had that were in that same vein that were huge players for us.
So they're playing. The good thing about it, though, this year, unlike in the state of Alabama, there's no crossover. Like AISA does not typically play AHSAA schools. They kind of stick to their own. Now, there are some private schools that play public school ball, but they don't have league crossover very often that I've ever seen. But this year, so we'll get to see him against some of the top competition in the state of Mississippi. They actually do some crossover stuff. They're going to play Columbia, which is one of the top. Apparently, I have a state of Mississippi source, by the way, so I know all the lowdown on all the high school competition in Mississippi. So they play Columbia the very first game of the season. So they're 4A in Mississippi, solid team. I think they won their region last year. So you get to see him against Columbia there, and then you get to watch him play Tupelo at Tupelo. Tupelo's a 7A. So they're big time in Mississippi. They won the state championship last year. So he's going up against two very, very tough public school teams on this season. And then there's some pretty competitive teams on his schedule as well. So you'll get to see that. I think the people that make up these rankings and come up with all these rankings, though, they know what they're looking at. And they take into account level of competition. They take into account his performance at camps and things like that. And he's obviously, to them, worth every bit of his ranking. So really, really good stuff. I want to throw something else at you. I talked about this on my show on Monday. Get your thoughts on this. Look, Auburn's defensive backfield, and you kind of talked about this before we got on Auburn's defensive backfield is, let's just call it what it is. It's deep. It's talented. And guess what? They're pretty young. They basically all come back next year. Really think about it. If Kay and Lee doesn't go to the NFL, basically everybody comes back. Okay. So it's not like there's a bunch of spots opening up for him to play. He was I'm sure he's going to be a very high end on the rev share totem pole. Is that the best place to put the money? You know what I mean? Like, is this the type player is it worth the investment, I guess, to go get a kid like this? Or could you have gone defensive line or somewhere else? Are we just, hey, let's get one on the board and do whatever we got to do to make some noise?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, it's one of those things where I don't know, right? It's hard to answer right now because you don't know how it all pans out. But
exactly, there
is a kind of money ball aspect of things of where you put your money, where you put your emphasis. I think for him, I know that it, like you said, it's an expensive investment as far as NIL, but I do think we kind of won this in sort of a traditional fashion as far as the relationships, feeling at
It
home.
definitely was big.
The classic recruiting things. And I don't see him flipping unless we go through a coaching change. But the other thing to me is like he seems like a culture guy. He seems like an Auburn guy and somebody who can kind of galvanize your team, be a future captain, things like that. And some of that stuff that doesn't just come out in the 40-yard dash and 7-on-7 drills and stuff.
Well said.
I think that's something that will be huge for years to come, is putting him in a room with Anquan Fagans, Eric Winters, Caleb Harris, and just building that continuity in the back end, Jay Crawford. So to me, it's a little bit goes past just, spending on a guy just
transactional. It's way past transactional. Exactly. It's more personal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, they've put so much into the retention piece. We're done at safety. So yeah. I don't see us taking another high school safety unless we, have a big season and someone like Jaira Edwards wants to flip. But I think we're done there as far as money. And that is, that's that, in my opinion.
It's a great end to a run that Auburn's been on this past, 30 days. You've added 4 or 5 commits, and every single one of them are very, very highly coveted. It started with Jacquez Wilkes. Then you got the Zierer kid, not Gerner. Yeah. Wilson's the offensive tackle. You get Jace, obviously, and then you cap it off with Bralan Womack. Great stuff there. Auburn's been on a heater. We're going to talk about TJ Rushing in a minute because there's a narrative that I wanted to throw at you that I heard about him when he was hired. We're going to discuss that in just a second. We'll be back right after this. Before I jump into the TJ Rushing discussion, one thing too, I failed to mention the versatility of Bralan is going to help him get on the field in some point or fashion early, whether it's in the return game, getting offensive snaps. He's a dynamic playmaker. He's one of those guys too, Sam, that we get interceptions. Okay. Like we get, there's no doubt, like we can turn you over, but very rarely I feel like you got that guy that not only is he going to turn you over, but he's going to make a big play in the return game. Like there's been some guys like Smoke Monday had a couple of pick sixes and things like that, but he's going to be one of those lurkers that just gets back there, makes a play, and then he's ready to go score when he gets the ball in his hand. So I think that'll help him get on the field really quickly. So Charles Kelly leaves Auburn. He was Auburn's safety coach, regarded as one of the best recruiters in the game. Huge shoes to fill. Huge. There's no question about it. Auburn promotes from within. TJ Rushing, who came over with DJ Durkin from Texas A&M. And if you looked at his recruiting profile, there were some big guys. There were some big names on his commitment list. And this is what I kept hearing from opposing fan bases. Doesn't matter. It's Texas A&M. You can always recruit at Texas A&M. It's all about money. It's all about this. It's all about that. So it's like poo-poo on that. He comes in his first real recruiting cycle. He's got a 5-star, one of the highest rated players that's ever been committed to Auburn from a composite standpoint. Like when you talk about overall ranking, he's got TJ Rushing's name attached to him. I think that pretty much silences a lot of that talk.
Absolutely. And it's when you were saying that, it kind of made me think like the Texas A&M, they just paid everybody. Same for, you hear that with Jake Thornton when he gets a guy. Everyone's always going to say that now that money's involved. Oh, they wouldn't have gotten that guy without money. But at the end of the day, it reminds me a lot of when everyone was in, turmoil about Vontrell King Williams. And he has been an excellent coach. He's been an excellent recruiter. He has been a great evaluator, and he checks all the boxes. So it's just funny, if Durkin has his name attached to somebody and Freeze signs off on a guy and you think he can't recruit, to me, that is just, it's just ignorance at this point. The players keep coming, you know, and right now we got to handle our business on the field and win to keep that up. But as far as recruiting goes, it's another, skin on the wall as far as, I didn't think we'd ever get a 5-star over Ohio State, and here we are,
Yeah.
and TJ Rushing had a lot to do with that from what I've heard.
So that's big. That's big. Big one for TJ Rushing to kind of get under his belt and just continue to build that momentum in that back end. Sam, I looked at all our past commits as far as the recruiting rankings will take us. And I believe from a composite standpoint, this is the only 5-star defensive back that Auburn's ever landed. I don't think I'm wrong. I could be wrong. Safety, corner, doesn't matter. Those defensive backs have been elusive. We've had 5-stars pretty much maybe at every position, except for any defensive back. Maybe that's a sign. Maybe that could be a sign of things to come. I don't know. I think that's is big for in that aspect as well.
Absolutely. It's one of those things where they give you a little bit more pop. They have a little bit more publicity attached to them. I think you're right. I've listened to some people talk in the lead up to it about how this will be the first one in everyone's lifetime. So it is crazy. Everyone doubts, and me included. I didn't think we would have this one, and we just keep exceeding expectations in recruiting. So it's a phenomenal get, to go into the season with.
For sure. Blake Woodby had jumped to a 5-star on ESPN last year, but I think he was like a 3-star on 247 or something like that. So when you're just talking about across the board, a 5-star in the composite, correct us if we're wrong, but I don't think we've had one ever. So let's talk rankings, okay? So I typically like to go by 247 Sports. I like their composite. I like their class calculator as well. So it kind of helps you project where Auburn can fall. Sure, we can go look at On3, and On3 is going to be more favorable. I think we're all the way up to like maybe 22nd or 23rd or something like that in the On3 industry rankings. But right now, Auburn is 35th, which is exactly where I said Auburn would be. They jumped to 35th. In June, Sam, we were what, like high 70s, if I'm not mistaken?
Maybe even 80s on some sites. It was bad. We were down there with, the likes of Colorado State and Tulsa and whoever else. So
we were making jokes. Like when we would get a commit and we'd jump like Tulane, we'd be like, suck it, Tulane. Here we come. Yeah. Like, we're coming. And, stuff like that, or, whatever. Hey, San Diego State, we're on your tail. We were basically just trying not to cry. We were just, laughing it out. But Auburn gets up to the 35th ranking on 247's composite. Probably going to slow down for a bit on commits. I think that was the last big one before the season starts. Let's get some wins under our belt, get these visits rolling at maybe that Georgia game. And after that, like 5-game stretch where you have, I think, 3 or 4 home games, probably bring in several guys then. And then maybe you can start seeing some flip targets pop up. But it's been a really good run up until then. I don't know if you remember this, Sam. Maybe you and I had this conversation, but Auburn's kind of drawing a lot of comparisons to Florida at this point in time. And they're actually ahead of where Florida was from a recruiting ranking standpoint before the season started last year and before the season started this year. So Auburn's ahead of where Florida was at this point in time last year. Florida ended up with a top 10 class just by going 8-5. The sky's the limit, I guess, if you can go win, man. If you can go win, Auburn can go basically wherever they want to go.
Absolutely. I think it was the first time I was on with you, we talked about like average player ranking in the class, which is even higher. I think it was at like 16 on 3. And we even talked about like having looking at the total roster rather than just a single class, and how a certain player slots into the roster, how that might be more reasonable now with NIL and, development and all the things that go into it with the transfer portal. So, like I said earlier, I think it is kind of like Moneyball. We're going to focus on retention and sign a small class. And from here on out, I think we're going to be kind of big game hunting a little bit.
Exactly.
to fill these spots out. We might take, one or two more 3-stars, but I think after that it's going to be, big time flip. And of course, everyone's committed. So you're just going to be looking at, blue chip flips from here on out. And if we win, I think it's going to be crazy momentum to move towards signing day and probably another really good class.
You said this earlier in another conversation, and I think I agree with you, though. Yeah, it may be a small class, but if Auburn gets hot and Auburn's knocking on the door of a playoff and the momentum is hype and dudes start ringing those phones, I think they'll take as many as they can get.
Yeah,
as many as they can get. Yeah, I think ultimately – if you can get to 18, you're probably happy. Yeah. But hey, if Zion Ely gets fired up for Auburn and calls and you're at that 18 number, they're not going to hang up. They're not going to turn him away. If Tank Jones says the same thing, they're not going to turn it away. If CD Morgan decides he wants to jump in the boat, they're not going to turn him away. So yeah, the plan may be for 18, but if this thing gets rolling and Auburn does what we think they can do this season, and those phones start ringing, I think they're going to make it happen, and it may be a bigger class than we expected.
Come play for the 9-time champions, man.
9-time champions. The University of Auburn is undefeated.
I'm telling you,
in commitments.
He's going to be a dog when he says that.
When they say University of Auburn, just go ahead and pencil them in as an All-American. It's going down. So,
that's right.
Guys, enjoy this. I love seeing the golf memes. I said it last night or yesterday on my show. I was like, hey, if we get this commitment, I want to see a bunch of golf memes. Kenyatta did one, which was hilarious. I'm taking full credit for it. Obviously, I'm not. He more than likely didn't see this, but that stuff's great. Lean into that. Lean into the 9-time national champion because it makes everybody so mad, and I love ruffling feathers. So enjoy it, guys. Sam, thanks for jumping on. We'll be back again soon. Next week is next week's game week. I don't know where I was going with that. We'll talk again soon. It's another episode of the Top Button Podcast. Stay button.
Thanks for listening, and drive home safely.